I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman. And what is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. And in this video, I'm making absolute Batman. Not just Batman, but like absolute Basically, I was just inspired by the new Absolute Batman comic and was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I should try and make this before the hype dies down. And I only accomplished one of those things. Guess you'll have to figure out which one. And this version of Batman is so big that I'm actually going to make his armature slightly different. And you know how all my other sculptures, they're somewhat human-like, so their torsos are somewhat rectangular. But with Absolute Batman sculpture, his torso is so big that he's basically a square for a torso instead of a rectangle, which is also why it took me so much longer to bulk up this sculpture and start smoothing it out, because there's like double the amount of area, I think. Then again, I'm also not in math this semester. That's gonna be the next one, so I don't know how to do math too good. But then again, I don't know if doing math is actually required for sculptures, because all I'm doing is looking at reference pictures and making sure it looks cool. And also, in this sculpture, he is going to defeat Absolute Bane because of plot armor, I guess? Or clay sculpture armor? That doesn't make sense. Well, I'm sure I'll explain it later in the video, but for the moment, I need to bulk out all his muscles to make them even bulkier than before. The true answer to this video is, how can I make Batman bigger? And just bigger and basically make it look like he's pumped full of super tren. Even though Batman is built like a brick wall, his muscles aren't angular, so they obviously need to be smoothed out, followed by the knees and the boots with the sections around his feet and on the bottoms of his feet, because they're supposed to look like boots. Duh. And these are some absolute baby stompers. Well, I think I actually want to take that back slightly. Not baby stompers, but baby drop kickers into the atmosphere. At least that was one of the panels for Absolute Batman. I wasn't reading up to that point, but I just thought it was kind of funny. Before then sculpting his giant leg muscles, because obviously he has to be built like a brick. With Batman's absolutely massive leg muscles, I can cover them in a thin little towel. Just kidding. This is age appropriate, it's not an actual towel. This starts as a wrap though around his whole body, because for some reason it seems like he's wearing booty shorts, except they're over top of his main suit for some reason. Maybe the normal Batman wears that too, but I just really didn't notice. And because I made his shorts slightly thick, I did kind of give him an absolutely snatched waist, which I think is pretty funny, before then carving off bits of the shorts to make it look a bit more realistic and three-dimensional, like his legs are moving forward instead of just being completely flat, before then adding tons of wrinkles like the reference picture says, because they're being pulled tight. And don't worry, I didn't forget the backside wrinkles either. They're just gonna show up in later parts of the video when I do other details. But right now, I need to make the chest a little bit bigger in preparation for the giant axe blade, followed by the abs and the upper abs, I guess, and smoothing them out, because, again, this is a person, technically. I do not know how he's not a superhero with how big he is in comics or the sculpture, but I think this makes it even cooler and doesn't perpetuate unrealistic body standards at all. But that's okay, because we're now moving on to the Batman symbol on his chest, where the axe would have been. While making Batman's chest axe symbol thing, I was trying incredibly hard to actually make the squares somewhat decent, And except on the edges, I think this looks like a pretty good amount of textured squares before then adjusting the camera slightly and putting it on Batman's chest all nice and proud. But it does look a little flat right now, so I need to give it some spikes, which are pretty simple. They're just triangles, before then giving Batman his belt as well, because I'm not sure what he's holding in the pouches, but he has 4, and that's a bit more than 0, so I obviously gotta make a belt to hold something up, before then also carving in a belt buckle, because I'm lazy like that. It looks convincing enough. After attaching all of the little bags to Batman's belt, which probably holds some kind of explosive or more batarangs, or just a gun, honestly. But then again, I think Batman would have a little bit too much plot armor if he just had firearms, but it is a lot cooler to have a giant axe, so I'll give him that. But I need to blend in his shoulders because they were looking a little small originally, and now I can step right into making his shoulder plates, which look deceptively similar, but I can cut them down slightly so they have a bit more of the shape that I'm looking for, which is a bit smoother and a bit more shoulder pad-like, before then going in and smoothing out the sections of the muscles, because like the legs, I want Batman to be looking big, like a beefcake-y, and then to make the anatomy look a little bit more correct, I can cut down some of the clay on the sides to make the forearms taper into a smaller point, even though that point is only like 2% smaller than the upper arms, but that's okay because I can move on to making the neck area of Batman's suit, which is just this square of clay to start that's roughly blended in the shoulder pads, and then an even thicker stump of clay is blended in on top of that to act as the traps and Batman's neck protection. Now, I was doing a little bit of gambling with this project. Either do the head first or the hands first, and I rolled the head first, which luckily isn't too bad. It's just a giant pill that looks a little smooth and a little bit pointy. But that's okay. Even though it's pretty simple, I am going to try to make it look a bit more detailed, starting by smoothing it out and finding out the best side to make his face, and then carving out the lower half, because like most bat suits, his face is exposed, but only the lower half for some reason. I don't know, plot armor saves him there. Before then carving his cheekbones, because of course the mask shows enough where you can see his sharp, unrealistic cheekbones, and making his mouth in a it is what it is, or slightly upset pose, and making his nose, which is pretty simple because it's a helmet, so it's just one rigid shape, followed by the enormous eyebrows, which are also not furry or something because it's part of the suit, and the ears are pretty easy. They're just little bits of clay that are added on, and I can carve out the eyes off camera as well and stick it in to the next spot. But I did carve a little bit of a gap off camera because I wanted it to fit a little bit better, before then starting to make the hand, which does look a little bit funky right now. It just looks like a hot dog and a weird amalgamation of shapes, but I promise this is just the handle, and Batman does not have a dumb looking baton. Well, I mean, he does, but it's about to look a lot cooler. I'm just gonna make that axe, and hopefully it'll stay in his hand, and it definitely won't fall off. Foreshadowing. Well, with the hand blended in, I can start making the other, which coincidentally I did off camera, but what I can start doing is making the knuckles, which are even easier because they're just lines, and with the fingers separated, they look close enough to like hammers for fists, before then making his straps around his arms, because what's some extra detail, baby? I don't really know, but this Batman sculpture is just crammed with detail. And I'm not saying I don't like it, but I don't see the purpose of these straps. But what I do see the purpose of is these giant spikes all over Batman's shoulders and the neck guard area, which will be really helpful when absolute Batman battles the absolute demons in Gotham, and not just the Joker. But painting is pretty straightforward. It's just a bunch of grays, especially this one scene here. And like all the other sculptures I've made in the past, I don't want Batman's muscles looking flat. So on all of the parts where muscles would be, I'm taking this lighter gray and putting it all over the middle majority pieces of the muscles instead of the very edges. So at least it kind of looks like shadows. Again, I'm not actually really making shadows, I'm just really highlighting all of Batman's muscles, but I think it looks close enough because I'm just highlighting everything. And like I've never said before, if it doesn't look good, just highlight it. It will probably fix it. And now I want to get the shadows and highlights even brighter, so I can go in with a concrete gray on the muscles again, but making sure to go on an even smaller area to make all the muscles in Batman's suit look a lot lighter. But I need to make his boots look a lot darker, because in the reference pictures, his boots are black, not like gray or something. But then again, gray Batman boots, that seems kinda dumb in my head. Maybe it's not for you guys, but I need to do the same thing for the shoulder plates, which is that same black for the boots and the shoulder plates, and the same black for the helmet. Well, technically it is like a super dark gray, but then again, a super dark gray is pretty much just black. That's a tiny bit less black, which just sounds dumb. But I can do the same thing for the shorts, just to keep it consistent. Again, I don't know why Batman has booty shorts, but I think it's kind of funny. But we'll just move on past that, I guess, even though it is kind of an odd detail. But what is not an odd detail is the giant Batman logo on his chest. Even though it's technically not the exact same Batman logo, I just think the design I went for makes a little bit more sense. And with all the most recent details I've been doing, these armbands and the axe handle can get the same basically black paint. But don't worry, they're going to get some highlights eventually, just not as bright as Batman's original suit. And same thing for the axe blade painting, it's going to be just a bit different. Instead of the grays, it's going to be a little bit more of browns, and then reds are going to pretty much cover it because that's going to be the future blood. But what is not red and not bloody is his belt, which that I can also give some extra detail on to make it look really rough and worn, because of course Batman's armor has to be all scuffed up. Same thing for the giant chest plate in the middle, which also gets another dry brushing of basically the same belt brown color, followed by the same brown on the axe blade, which I think is a little bit better than just gray, because it makes it a tiny bit dirtier, even though it's pretty stinking hard to see in the camera, but I swear it's there, followed by some more dry brushing for highlights, even though I went originally too hard in the highlights, because I forgot to wipe off enough paint, so hopefully it doesn't look too dumb. But I can still do the same highlights around the shoulder plates and the helmet, it's just another lighter gray like before. I don't know what you guys are really expecting, but this Batman is on gray, on gray, on gray with black and then a little bit of skin tone for his face. But I'm about to get there, and speaking of his boots, I'm gonna do those, even though I wasn't speaking about his boots, but I'm almost at his face, is what I'm trying to say. And now I can finally do that peach-ish skin color, which is pretty much the only thing that's setting this sculpture apart, other than black and gray. And I can give him a little bit of stubble, but I wanted him to have more of a beard actually, so I did make the paint even darker, because I figured if Batman has to fight literal demons and like Bane, who's literally 16 feet tall, when powered up with super tren, I think he's gonna grow a bit of a beard, but then again, the whites of the eyes are also an addition, but they're pretty small, so I still consider it black and gray mostly. Followed by the base, which is this bit of clay which I can hammer this texture into that I think looks pretty close to concrete, which I can snap and break up around his feet to act as some sort of concrete base. To give the base a little bit more depth, I can stack a few pieces on top of each other in random spots around his feet and the base, which I'm not really sure why I was doing this besides making the base a little bit more interesting, and I don't know why I was even painting the base to begin with, because I'm going to cover it up in this brown muddy mixture. So painting the base brown didn't actually make a difference, because I'm just going to cover it up anyway, because I thought that this would make a little bit more sense and tie the base in together a little bit better, because the random pieces of broken concrete seemed pretty random. But then again, also painting them would help too, which I think is a start. But there was a lot of gaps, so it really took a while. But that's okay, because in the power of editing, it doesn't look like I took too long. But then dry brushing also really helps that process too, and making the details really pop while blending them in and making them look cool but not overly cool. Actually, no, scratch that. I want this to be overly cool, because how can something be overly cool? Even though I pretty much already did it, I'm going to do a little bit more dry brushing of all the concrete slabs to make it look even more textured, before then doing the same thing with the dirt/mud, and making sure to also wipe a little bit of the brown on the concrete slabs to make the concrete tie into the base a little bit better, before then adding some blood. B-L-O-O-D. Blood. Blah, blah, blah. But really, I'm just trying to tell a story, and right now, this story is someone's getting killed, or unalived, for YouTube, I guess. But this'll give it away, I think. These giant green tubes that look a lot like tubes. I don't know. But with the help of shading and highlights, I think it looks pretty obvious what it's gonna be, especially with all the light reflecting off of the rocks and shining onto his boots. It's absolute Bane and his super tren. Or at least that's what I was trying to do. And then I also made this cape off camera. I was debating about making a cape, but then I decided last minute, heck yeah dude, I'm making a cape. And I am so glad I did, because it looks so much better. Followed by painting the base black as the final detail, and it's time for the reveal. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more giant bloody axe killing absolute Bane builds like this next. And maybe I'll even do another enemy like absolute Joker. But he is a freak of nature. Well, see you in the next video. Bye.